Hi guys, welcome. This is Mattjestic Gaming, and today we have something special for you. Today we have a tier list or walkthrough for items for the early game, mid game, and late game. Now, unfortunately, I was unable to find a tier list online similar to the auto chess tier list, but what I did find was something very nice. It's the Liquid Discord tier list of items. It's not placed in terms of tier list, but it does show us in the format of basic items and upgrades. And for each items I drag over here, we should be able to see it over here. That's great. So to start it off, why do we have an item tier list? Because items can be the critical game changer in the early game, mid game, and late game. And a well-positioned item can do so much for the unit and for you as well as a player. Why is that? Because an item that helps you tank on the front line can make the difference if your frontline lives. Item that helps boost the backline's mana can make the difference if your disruptor or if the enemy Razor nukes you down. If your disruptor goes first, he's gonna stop. And lastly, a damage item on a well-placed backline or a damage dealer can really change the game in any stage of the game. So okay, let's get started. To introduce, we currently have the basic items. And notice how the basic items are arranged in this particular formation. This is because this shows you some of the items that are findable before round 20, and some of the items are not easy to find, or it's impossible to find before round 20. Let me show you why. Other than the Blink Dagger, which I don't think this one updated, other than Blink Dagger, everything here can be found before round 15, or even at round 15. Now at round 15, there's a small chance of finding those items. Very small chance. So you can consider other than the Blink Dagger should be here as well, by the way. So round 1 to 15, there's a chance of finding those items. From round 15 and onwards, there's a chance of finding those items. And the round 30 is the Lizard round. The Lizard round is where you start to look for those items. Those three, by the way. And the round 35 is when those items comes in. So let me rephrase myself. Round 1 to 15, those items become available. Round 15, those items becomes available. And round 25, I think, those items becomes available. And round 35, the dragons, those items becomes available. Why is this important? This gives us a clue of finding the items we want to combine and what item we can combine in the early game, the mid game, and the late game. For example, the best item you can find in the early game is Ring of Health. One of the best items, that is. Why is that? Ring of Health and Void Stone can be found in the early game. We have seen people, even myself, finding a refresher. That means 2 Perseverance. So 1 Perseverance, 2 Perseverance. So finding 2 rings and 2 Void Stone by round 3. Finding those, what enables us is to find a refresher. This is one of the strongest items in the game, and currently this item can be found at round 3. I know this takes a lot of luck, but it is doable, and I have experienced it before, and I'll have a video later on I'll post for you guys as a really fun like WTF video for those things. So now let's start with the early game. In the early game, round 1 to 15, the items other than the Blink Dagger, you can see them. What are the best items and what you should do with them? The best items are those: Star Shield, Ring of Health, Void Stone, and Chainmail. And yes, you can fuse only 3 combination items, which are Perseverance, which goes into Refresher if you're lucky enough, a Hood, which is made this way. So 1 ring, 1 small ring, and a cloak. And the last thing you can fuse is the Mask of Madness. Mask of Madness requires 1 Quarterstaff and 1 Mask of Lifesteal or Mobbing Mask. So those are the only 3 fusible, other than the refresher that is the top tier refresher over here. So those are the 3 fusible from round 1 to 15. But most of us won't be getting all of those items to be fusible ones. We'll be getting the single items. That's why I'll be highlighting a few of the single items. For the Star Shield, why is this item top of my tier for round 1 to 15? Simply because it blocks 10 damage. A friend of mine did a research. Apparently the mechanics is that the monster will receive the full damage, and then the mechanic will refund the monster 10 health after. I'm not sure if this is true, but if anyone can confirm that, please let me know. But a friend of mine said this way: if the monster is going to receive a fatal damage, he will die. if you receive a no fatal damage, you will be refunded 10 health by the stock shield. Ring of Health is just so great. It's better than a stock shield because it regenerates 10 health per second. And we have seen units that stacks lots of Ring of Health, and with a stock shield, it's almost unkillable. Void Stone gives 100% mana on attack. What that means is units that gains mana at a double rate, and that's just so good. So again, I think the top tier of the items from round 1 to 15 are Stock Shield, Ring of Health, Void Stone, and Chainmail. Chainmail, the 5 armor, you can picture 5 armor as 22% physical resistance, but because armor increase is gained diminishing return, that means if you already have 5 armor, you get 5 more armor. You don't gain the 22% physical difference, but you gain about, I think about 15-ish, or maybe less, 14-ish physical difference. But if enemy reduce your armor by 5, this Chainmail becomes your 22% physical defense. So this is an excellent item. Now, what are the other items that we can use? So, simply put it, the Stock Shield should be put and given to the frontliners, usually combined with a Ring of Health, a multiple Ring of Health, and a Chainmail. We have seen Clockwork or any bruisers, the units that excels in fighting single units, having those items, and soloing more than just one unit. This Void Stone can be placed on units that you want to get the spell cast early. But keep in mind, this item is so good in the mid and late game, you almost always want to give this item to units like Deucer, Disruptor, Tide, Conquer, the Initiators. So what does that mean? It means those 3 items, they can stay on the frontliners. You don't have to worry. This item, you might have to sell the unit that you place it on to salvage this item to be given to another unit. So if you give to a unit that you don't plan on selling in the mid game or late game, it's going to be very awkward because early game units do fall off. Items like those, the only thing I want to highlight is the Blightstone and the Quarterstaff. The Blightstone reduces armor by 3. You definitely want to give this one to a range unit. Usually range units tend to focus on one unit. And minus 3 armor is about, I think about 10-11% of increased physical damage, which is great for focus fire. And the Quarterstaff. The only items the Quarterstaff can fuse into is a Master Madness and a Monkey King Bar. Monkey King Bar is very far away, simply because those items only appears at around 25 and onwards. And what does that mean is, if you try to get a Monkey King Bar, you have to wait for round 25 plus. And we know usually at round 25, it's pretty much do or die. Half of the time we have enough health, the other half of the time we're desperate for help. So we're not really thinking about Monkey King Bar unless it just happens randomly. And just happens you just have those items. So this particular item, I tend to give units that wants to attack faster. So they can gain mana faster or something happens when they attack faster. Let me give you an example. I can stack this item on Shadowfing. I can stack this item on Venomancer. I can stack this item on Lone Druid. Because Shadowfing does great damage. Venomancer and Lone Druid want to get the spells off. So I know this is something basic, but this item, once you stack a few of them, this is actually incredibly strong. Why is that? Sometimes if you have 3 Quarterstaff, that's equal to 1 Hyperstone plus 1 Javelin. So think about 3 Quarterstaff equaling to 1 Javelin and 1 Hyperstone. If you saw someone with 1 Javelin and 1 Hyperstone, you'd be like, wow, he's so strong. But that's same as 3 Quarterstaff. So that's something I want to highlight in the early game. And yes, you put usually those items on units that want to get the spells off instead of just for purely the damage. Because I feel like damage and attack speed boost items would really benefit units that can get the spells off. And for example, this is great on Deucer, this is great even on Witch Doctor. But again, if we keep this later for the troll, this can make Mask of Madness and the Monkey King Bar for the troll. So if you plan to go troll, I wouldn't recommend giving it to the Witch Doctor. I recommend giving this to the troll later. And once we get to round 15, there's a chance of dropping those items. Usually there will be a combination you can combine, and sometimes the top row will be finding a Javelin and finding a Mithril Hammer. What does this combine? It's a Maelstrom. What I want to touch on is that in the early game, I would like to use most of my items that I'm given on particular units. I give the spellcaster mages that want to get the spells off attack items. I give them mana regeneration item. I give my front lines tanky items, and I give my range units magic resistance debuff. I don't mind if it's Enchantress, if it's a Shadow thing, if it's a Troll Warlord. I'll give that range unit this item because almost likely he will hit the unit and they will get debuffed. It's not like the Troll is going to do magic damage, but rather he will enable we always land a magic debuff on the enemy. If it's a melee unit, sometimes we've seen that the enemy is in a corner and all my units are around the corner, they can't hit the enemy. So we want the range unit to put a debuff on. So when we get to round 15, we have a chance of finding those items. What I recommend is try to stack your unit with a chainmail with a playmail. Why is that? Because you have a chance of making assault carriers and a Shiva Guard. The Shiva Guard is very unlikely, while the assault carriers is very, very strong. It's one of the strongest items in the game. Now, we can combine the Blades of Attack with the Attack Blade. So we can combine the broadsword with the Attack Blade for Crystals. This is one of the combinations we should look out for. The second one is Maelstrom with those two, and the last one is preparing ourselves for the actual assault cards. So usually I give units that are ranged or that can deal damage my Crystals. Crystals is not that strong, to be honest. It's 15% to do 1.5 damage. What makes it strong is when Crystals combines with the Demon Age. The strongest item you can find at round 15 are those three. This one should be given to the tank. For a tank, I really like Juggernaut. If a Juggernaut is given an armor item, Juggernaut spins. He's magically immune, he takes reduced physical damage because sometimes you have 3 warriors. With another armor, he's almost immortal. And that's a good example. Or sometimes I can give to units like a Long Druid because he has 0 armor. This 10 armors goes a long way. It's like reducing physical damage by 30+%. And Long Druids, even at level 2, are really tanky with health. Those two items are very strong, simply because in the early game you have a Blightstone. If you kept your Blightstone on a range unit, and if you happen to find 2 Mithril Hammer, you combine them into a Desolator. And the Desolator means minus 15 armor on your range unit, and this enables crazily strong focus fire. And we've seen Hunter builds, if they get a Desolator, they almost annihilate the enemy in the mid game. On top of that, this Mithril Hammer have a chance of combining into Maelstrom. Maelstrom in comparison is not as strong as the Desolator, but it's a very nice item simply because the chance of proccing magic damage in terms of lining 25%. We can think about this as having a 100% chance to do 25 magic damage to 3 enemies if you keep attacking. And what's the best way to keep attacking is when we place a Maelstrom on range unit, because range units, unless the units are jumping, the range unit will always attack the unit in front of it, have a good chance of proccing instead of melee units having trouble to hit enemies when there's someone in front of him. Now, saying that, we kind of have an idea in the mid game which unit we want to keep and which unit we want to take to the late game. For example, I tend to give all of those units I find, all of those items, to my Queen of Pain, to my Razor, or to something I just want these spells to be cast faster. Because having more attack damage means you'll do more damage. Doing more damage means you gain more mana. In doing so, you'll cast your spells quicker. Now, but doing so have a downside. Because I'm a very mid-game focused player at this point in the game, which I'll explain in the guide. Because of that, if I give those items to a Razor, to a Queen of Pain, I'm likely to sell a Queen of Pain, but not my Razor. What that enables and what that creates is that in the late game, if I have a 2-star DK, which one of my viewers did point out, I didn't sell my items from the Razor to give to the DK. Or if I have a 2-star Gyro, then I'm very timid. Do I want to sell my Razor to give items, or do I want to keep a 2-star Razor? So do it with caution, but I do give those items to my mid-game carries. For example, I feel Razor is one, Shadow Thing is one, and the other one will be my Queen of Pain or my Terrorblade. Now, once we go into the mid-game to late game, those items also appear. So I did miss. So after round 15 or even at round 15, there's a chance to find all 6 of those. So notice this one is very special. This Vitality Booster can be combined into Vanguard. Vanguard is items you can find in the early game, and we always find those 2 items, so I always keep a unit with those 2 items ready. So in the early game, I'll have my frontliners having those 3 items. And also those, I usually leave 2 space for my frontliners to be open. My backliners usually have those 4 items. My mages usually have those items. And sometimes my frontliners will have this item and this item as well, if I intend on selling them. Now what does this do is it prepares me to fuse the backliners with the crystallers, the backliners with the Maelstrom, and the frontliners with the AC in preparation. It also enables me to fuse the Vanguard because the frontliner have those 2 items ready. And this staff is very unique. This is something I want to focus on in the mid game. There's 2 choices most of the time. Most of the time, or half of the time, we're given a crown and a rope of Magi. Notice if you have those 2 items on one particular unit, which item is positioned on top, because you have 6 slots, you have 3 inventory slots. With the 6 slots, you can place items on the 6 slots. With the inventory slots are only for combination. That means if you have a ring of health, let's say if I have a unit with those 6 items, and now I give my unit a stock shield and a vitality booster in the spare slots, those 2 items are not going to work on the unit. Not going to give it stats and not going to give it health. But what's it going to do is going to combine the next turn, and then you have 6 items again. So the extra slot on a unit is for combining items, while the 6 slots are the only slots that works on the unit. Now, the special thing I want to highlight with the Staff of Wizardry is, yes, which item that shows up, whether it's Crown or Rope of Magia that shows up on the unit, placed on the unit first, will combine the first item. Let's say if I have a Shadow Thing with this item and this item, the Crown and the Rope of Magia. If I give the Crown first, you automatically combine into a Kaya over here. Oh no, sorry. You automatically combine into a Dagger over here instead of a Kaya. I was going to say instead of a Kaya. So that means you need to be aware. But half of the time, those 2 items are not on the same target. And if you do have those 2 items and just one of them, definitely just combine with the Staff of Wizardry. The choice is, what do you choose when you have both? Do you go for the Kaya or do you go for the Dagger? My answer will be, it is situational, but I can give you some generic advice. Let's look at my team. Does my team deal lots of magic damage? Does my team deal AoE damage? Does my team deal single target damage? Does my team lack damage, or does my team have enough damage? There's many questions, many rhetorical questions. So what I like to do is, if my team does AoE damage, and I'll be making a Kaya, because I feel Kaya can really break the frontliners down, because I'll talk about magic resistance very soon, because the Kaya can melt the frontliners. Now, on the other side, if my team does single target damage, or if my team just all bruises, not many magic damage healers, I will be keen to make a Dagger. Simply because although Dagger doesn't increase that much magic damage dealt, Dagger itself does damage. So it's as if you have a Lena that casts a magic damage. So that's very strong in the mid game. It does fall off in the late game, I have to say, because if you're daggering a Tide, he's gonna get damaged, he's gonna get mana, and all of a sudden he's gonna ravage before you do, and then everything falls apart. So daggering has its risks, and I don't think they fixed the daggering yet, so it's still instant cast at the start of the round. Now, because of that, daggering have its risks. I tend to go Kaya more than Dagger unless I felt the need to have a bit of damage as a supplement damage, because I feel I just need a bit of damage to survive the rounds, or I don't care about the late game. I just want to survive or win the mid game. That's when I go for the Dagger. But of course, if you only have one of those items, just combine them. There's no question asked. It's always better if you combine them. Let's touch something on magic damage. What is magic damage? Magic damage is when unit casts a spell that deals damage to the enemy. Other than Enigma that does pure damage, and I think Timbersaw that does pure damage, everything depends on the magic resistance of the enemy unit. almost all enemy units except Anti-Mage, I think, and Lone Druid. Maybe there's some more, you guys can let me know in the comments. Has magic resistance. All other units have 0 magic resistance. Now, defense and magic resistance are multiplicative. What that means is, when you gain them, it's diminished return, but when you lose them, you lose a lot more when you stack them. Let me give you an example. If I have 3 mages and the mage debuff is 40% magic resistance debuff, and that does not mean the enemy take 40% more damage. The enemy actually takes 60% more damage because it multiplies. I'm not sure how the algorithm works, but by experience it takes about 60 more magic damage. And then if you have a unit has a Kaya that hits onto the enemy, notice how it says 60% here. The unit doesn't just take 40%, 60% additional damage. The unit actually takes about 160% damage. That's 1.6 times more magic damage. So if you were doing 100 magic damage, and if a unit has a 3 mage debuff and a Kaya hitting him, the unit will receive 260 damage instead of 100 damage. And that's what makes mages the powerhouse. Even with a small magic item, can go a long way. And if you have a range unit attacking the frontline is going to die. The mage unit is going to hit the next one. The next one is going to die from the magic damage. That's why I prefer range unit with the debuff items. Knowing that magic debuff stacks, we need to be aware of one thing, is that each of the items don't stack on themselves. The chainmail does stack, the blades, the plus damage does stack, so the armor and damage stacks, but Blightstone does not stack, Crown does not stack. Regeneration stacks, but not the magic debuff. Notice how this, so this one, and this one. So there's 4 debuff items, 1 armor debuff and 1 armor debuff, 2 magic debuff. Does not stack. If you give it to the same unit, it does not stack. If it's on different unit, it does not stack on enemy. And the stock shield does not stack. So don't give one unit 2 stock shields. And I did forget to mention that. So it's a little bonus for the units. So we have to remember, debuffs and the stock shield do not stack. Even Vanguard do not stack. We have to keep in mind of that. Armor does stack, damage does stack, magic resistance does stack, lifesteal stacks. Voidstone does not stack, keep in mind, and Crown does not stack. So that means if you have 1 crown, if you give unit another crown, it does not gain 100% mana, it still gains 50%. Those 2 different items does stack though, so that's something nice. Now, very soon you'll be facing into the mid to late game, or the late game. Once you get to round 25, you have a chance of those. Round 35, a chance of those. So what are my choices, or what are my decision makings of my item choice? So my item decision making and my choice is that I want my casters, I want my units to get the spells off to receive damage item and attack speed item. I want my disruptor to have items like ultimate orb. I want my tide to have this item. And I want my conquer to have this item because they're my initiators. Now if you haven't seen my tier list, make sure you check out my tier list on cost tier list and on my early game, mid game and late game tier list, where I demonstrate what are the initiators, what are my damage dealers, and what are my casters. So usually casters and damage dealers tend to take those items and they combine to a lot of good items, as we can see. I'm not going to touch on them each separately, but what I want to highlight is one thing. It's that damage on a unit means it casts faster because it deals more damage. The downside for a melee unit is it has trouble hitting in a late game, because half of the time something slows it, something stuns it, or something blocks its way, whether it's ally or whether it's just random enemies. So usually damage items are given to range unit, and most of the spellcasters and most of the range units are the attackers instead of the tankers. So what are the preference? I'll definitely prefer a data list compared to a Monkey King bar, because Monkey King bar only adds 80 damage while data list have a chance to critical 4 times and it already adds 40 damage. I prefer data list over Monkey King bar. So notice how this item, Demon Edge, is for both, but I think most of the time we actually don't have the ingredients for both. But just on the rare occasions you do have for both, I'll recommend to go for the data list. Now, notice how here we can make a maelstrom with those 2 items, with the javelin and with the mithril hammer. Once you have a Maelstrom, you can make it into a Majonia with a Hyperstone. This is very nice. You can give this item on the backliners or the frontliner. But this one is great simply because the 5 enemy and the 200 damage and the attack speed it gives, and it only takes up 1 slot. So this item is one of the best versatile items for the frontliners or for the backliners. Of course, if you got two Hyperstone, you can make a Moonshot, which is 70% attack speed and it's very strong on most units. Again, I refer to range units instead of melee units. So, on a rare occasion, if you have a choice of making a Crystallis or a Blade Mail, I'll always recommend making a Crystallis. Why is that? Because one gains mana, one reflects damage. Now, if you reflect damage, you're giving the enemy damage. That means they gain mana faster, and you really don't want that. And if you're doing more damage, that means you gain mana faster. And yes, enemy do receive more damage, and they kind of gain mana faster. But the sense is you do damage and you gain mana faster. I think for me, the game is about mana gathering and mana regeneration. Whoever has the most mana quickly enough will get the spells off and win the mid game and the late game. Now, I'm sure we all know those items can only combine into a specific item and they are very strong. And I'm sure for the late game, there isn't that much about the item decision making, but rather the hard decision of selling units to give a particular unit an item. I'll give you a few examples for the late game. For the late game, I would do, if I had units, let's say if I had a unit with the Perseverance, I had another unit with the Void Storm, maybe another unit with Ring of Health. If it's on 3 units, it's very awkward. Usually I tend to give 1 unit all the pieces of a refresher. So this way, if it does combine to a refresher, I will be willing to sell that unit, regardless if it's a 2-star Beastmaster, 3-star Razor, or a 3-star Shadowfang. I am willing to sell it for a few particular units. And those particular units are 1-star Tide, 2-star Disruptor, 2-star Conquer, and a 2-star Deucer. So those are the few units I'm willing to sell my units and have them on them just for the sake of the refresher. So yes, if you do find a 2-star Tide with a refresher, it's almost magical because the Tide will almost cast 2 Ravage every time if he's not silenced or if he's not disabled. And usually if you place him nicely, he will be able to cast him. Again, another item I'm willing to sell my units with is the, is the Hex. We call it Hex or Scythe of Wise. The Scythe of Wise have an instant ship, so it's going to turn random enemy units into a ship. I don't mind the magic resistance, every other stats came with it. I just want a Shaman combination, because we know Shamans, they instantly hex a unit. This item will instantly hex a unit at the start of the game. This is another item I sell units to combine into, because this is so great. It's as if you have a Shadow Shaman and a Disruptor synergy on your board just with 1 item. I think other than those 2, I don't have a big strong need to sell a lot of good units just to combine item in the late game. Now, you have noticed, or maybe you're very urged or very keen to hear this out, I have been leaving a special item to the end as a bonus. Blink Dagger. This is one of the newest items introduced to the game other than the Battle Fury. I'll be talking about the Battle Fury and the Blink Dagger now. I think I will talk about the Battle Fury first because it's pretty straightforward, and then we'll touch on the bonus Blink Dagger. Get some water. A Battle Fury is combined with 1 Perseverance and 1 damage. Notice how you can have, let me go on to the Battle Fury. Notice how you can have a Perseverance at the start of the game. It's a very rare role to get a damage at the late game. That's around round 25 and onwards. Now, what does that mean? It means that if you're looking for a damage and if you do not find one, your only bet with a Perseverance is a refresher, because it only goes to those 2. So the unit choice for a Battle Fury would definitely be a melee unit, because it's melee attack that does AoE damage. And as I mentioned earlier, you want mana gaining items on your mages. So the awkward paradox or the awkward challenge is, do you think you'll get a refresher before the battle free, or do you think you want a battle free? What I do usually is, I put a perseverance on a unit I'm willing to sell. So when I get a refresher, I can sell it. When I get a battle free, I can sell it. So to make it more versatile, like Enchantress is a great example. Enchantress with a perseverance make it really strong. Another example is a bounty hunter. I'm willing to sell this bounty hunter if I don't play goblins. That's when I can give bounty hunter all the mana regen items and just watch the little guy toss shurikens every 5 seconds and just nuke everything down. So Enchantress, Furum, bounty hunter are perfect examples of units I'm willing to sell in the early game. And sometimes even Venomancer. After round 25, I won't be using Venomancers in most of the cases. That's why I'm willing to sell the mana regen items if I can make a battle fury. What does battle fury do? For a melee unit, 2 grids around the unit. Now it's not confirmed if it's AoE or if it's 360 or 180. If anyone can confirm with me, that's great. Please leave a comment below. The cleave damage is AoE pure damage, by the way. So that means a battle fury enables this unit to become a demon. Not only just the unit it hits gets, the unit it hits doesn't get pure damage, but everything around the unit receives pure damage. So it's like an AoE demon hit. And the great thing is it does have mana on attack. So what that means is you hit once, you just get your mana back instantly. I recommend even try this on a Tide if you can, because the Tide will just hit twice and instantly free Ravage. Or Conquer. Conquer will hit twice and instantly free Bolt. Other great units are demons, because the demons already have really high damage, like a Doom is a great example. Or you can try it on a Juggernaut. Juggernaut have no back attack damage, really solid defense in terms of the spin, and he is usually the last unit to survive if he's 3-star. And one of the greatest example for the battle free, I'm sure some of you might have tried it, I'm still looking for that unit and the battle free in the same game, it's a Tusk. A Tusk's ultimate, the punch, is a physical damage. A Tusk works with battle free in Dota 2. So what that means is, technically I haven't confirmed this, so please let me know in the comments, that a Tusk punch is going to critical massively. It's going to be 1,000 damage with some attack items, or maybe close to 500 damage if it's not a 3-star Tusk. The Tusk is going to hit, and with the the Tusk gonna hit, and the unit it hits will receive about 500 to 1,000 damage. The unit around it will receive 50% of that damage in terms of pure damage, and that's incredible, guys. And now, the last item, the final finale of the item, it's a Blink Dagger. What does the Blink Dagger do for us? Half of the time when I first played the game with the Blink Dagger, I'm unsure. I tried it on my Tinker, it did not work that well. I tried it on my Techies, it used to be bugged out so it wouldn't place the bomb. And I had some success with Techies, and I used to call it, the bomb has been planted from Counter-Strike. So, the Blink Dagger, I initially found it really nice to be on tanky 3-star units like Clockwork, like Timbersaw, because yeah, I do play a lot of goblins. Or like 3-star Axe is not bad. A Juggernaut is not bad, simply for the fact, not because this unit is magical with Blink Dagger, but the unit blinks into the backline and start distracting the enemy backliners, or killing the enemy backliners. So, what that does is, he changes the AI of the enemy. If the enemy have a 2-star Juggernaut, if the enemy has some unit like Sniper, Jaw Ranger, if you blink to the backline with a tank unit, they will almost always focus on this unit and not hit your frontliners. The DK splash damage is gone. If it's a Luna, a 3-star Luna even, she might hit the one in front of him and not bounce on the other units, because Luna has a range for her bounce. If there's no unit inside, she won't be bouncing. And if it's a 2-star or 3-star Luna, you're actually reducing a lot of the enemy's damage. So the first suggestion for the Blink Dagger is to blink a tankier unit to the backline and reduce their damage. Now, there's one thing better on the Blink Dagger. One unit. There's one type of unit that's great with Blink Dagger as well. That's my Initiators. What are my Initiators? Make sure you check out my tier list. So I highlight a few now. They are the Conquer. They are the Deucer. Conquer and Deucer are the slow Initiators, by the way, because they have a delay. My Tide Hunter and my Disruptor are my fast Initiators. So I would always take Tide Hunter and Disruptor over Medusa and Conquer if I want a better Initiator. So you might ask, hey, They're great initiators. Why do you want to give them a Blink Dagger? Simply because if you give them a Blink Dagger, they avoid the frontliners, they jump to the backline. The backliners will focus them, might not focus them. This gives them great chance of casting their spells off. Instead of being countered by an anti-mage in the front line, instead of being countered by a bunch of humans that silence you out of 100% RNG, and instead of being caught up by the enemy Tide and enemy Medusa, by the enemy... Medusa is hard to dodge, this one's pretty unique. Instead of being caught by the Disruptor, Tide, and Conquer of the enemy. Medusa is a hard one. So, with a Blink Dagger and your initiators, where would you place them? I have had someone ask me this question today. They showed me a picture of his knight particular formation. He had his 2-star Tide in the very back because he had a Blink Dagger. What I recommend is to place his Tide in the front. What this does is, yes, you do have a Blink Dagger, you will be blinking to the front anyways. But if you place your unit in the front, and if there's space behind him, if there's a space that's open behind him, he'll blink even further. Now, what does this do is, having a unit in the front, a Tide Hunter or say a Disruptor, they will receive initial damage from the enemy before they blink. They gain a bit of mana, but they won't die. Then they blink to the backline. If anyone hits them, they will gain mana to cast. If no one hits them, they just need to hit one or twice and gain mana to cast. If you kept your units in the backline, if you kept your 2-star Tide or 2-star Disruptor in the backline, no one hits them at the start. They blink to the back, and if no one hits them, you see the awkward thing of your Tide trying to be a carry. He's like bang, bang, bang. Nothing's happening because no one's hitting him, and he's just there trying to get mana. By the time everything is finished, you either won or lost. The Tide is trying to get mana. And same thing with Disruptor, because they do not excel in getting mana. What they excel is taking damage and casting instantly after taking damage. That's why you want a unit like 2-star Disruptor, 1-star Tide, 2-star Tide to have the Blink Dagger. And they will blink forward, and before they blink, they receive some damage in the front line, then they blink to the back line. And there's one more thing, guys. As a bonus for the Blink Dagger, I'm sure some of you might have tried it, some of you might have not. You can give the Blink Dagger during a fighting round. What that enables is, the AI of the unit will automatically blink to the furthest spot on its row, on its column, that is. So, for example, if my Tide is fighting, and I saw within the fight, the enemy Disruptor cast on my Tide, he can't cast because he's under static storm. If now I run my courier to my Tide and give the Blink Dagger to my Tide, he's gonna blink forward. And the moment he blinks forward, he's free from the storm, he's gonna cast. This has worked with me many times before, and I think this is just something nice that we can try. For example, if my Juggernaut is being focused by an assassin, or if there's an assassin next to my 2-star Juggernaut, and I don't want my Juggernaut to be hitting this assassin, I want him to be splashing on the enemy front line. I run over, give him the Blink Dagger, he's gonna blink forward, and he has a chance of hitting the enemy backline. But keep in mind, if you're not giving the Blink Dagger to a Tide, but if you give it to Juggernaut, next turn when the turn comes, your Juggernaut is going to blink forward because you can't take it back. So this is one of those desperate situations you give the Blink Dagger. It's great if you give a timing Blink Dagger on a Tide, Medusa, Enigma maybe, Disruptor, Conquer. But if you give it to a Juggernaut, you're not going to have a good time the next turn comes. So that's a little bonus. So to summarize, the early game units, I tend to plan for the mid game. I give a few combination items on the same target, same unit that is. For the mid game items, I try to make them combine with my early game items. And for the late game items, I'm willing to sell my units if I get my refresher or if I get my Scythe of Rise. Other than that, I pray for my AC because AC is a key item. Actually, the last thing I want to highlight is Assault Cuirass. Assault Cuirass is such a strong item, and there's two uses of Assault Cuirass. One is that not only it increases attack speed of everything around you, so that's 9 units around you, and it also reduces enemy attack speed and armor. 10 armor is massive. Picture Assault Cuirass as having having the 4 undeads on your team. That's how much armor they reduce. There's 2 ways to use it. One is to defensively use it, one is to offensively use it. Defensively, you can have your units in a ball formation and have the unit with Assault Cuirass in the middle of this ball formation. Likely, enemy can jump to you and all of your units are going to have more armor and more attack speed. That's defensively. Offensively, you can have a few strong units in the front line on the top row and have a few hard-hitting units behind them. What that does is at the start of the round, the units that touches are facing your frontliners with assault carriers will receive reduced armor, and it's as if you're stacked enough armor reduction like 4 undead. And then you have a great chance of instantly killing that 1-star tide, instantly killing that 2-star disruptor. But notice that it comes with a risk. With great damage enemy received, they receive great mana. If they're instant casters, they might cast before you kill them. And yes, to summarize again, I think items are great. The item RNG in this game is not optimal, but we can manage ourselves to make the most use of our items. And to do so, we really want to plan for the early game. I tend to give most items in the game, knowing that some of the units I'm able to sell. Plan for the mid game and adjust for the late game. Items and unit positions are what wins us in the late game, if you know what units to pick for the late game. And for the units to pick, make sure you check out my tier list as well for my late game tier list. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for all your support, for subscribing, liking, leaving helpful comments, asking questions, and supporting me on Twitch and YouTube. I am very grateful, guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.